Hello, everyone.
Guys. Clown emoji, clown emoji, clown emoji.
Oh, then.
Wait, is the sound working? Yeah.
Hello. Okay.
Golden.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to be talking about Linux boot process, or how your modern gaming PC pretends that it's actually from the 1970s.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah. So, Robert, I'm third year egg gang.
Go Robert.
Egg gang. Yeah.
Next
Yeah.
top. Go next top.
Yeah. So your modern gaming PC pretends to be this particular processor from the 1970s, because all later Intel and eventually AMD CPUs were based off of this one, and they have an absurd amount of backwards compatibility. As in, when your computer boots up, it first boots up in a mode that is emulating this, and will only switch to be able to run things that aren't 16-bit from 1978. When explicitly told to. This, for some reason, is considered sane and normal, but yeah, processor vendors. There. Okay. So then, once the CPU is turned on, it executes the BIOS, which, unlike really old PCs, like 1978 era ones is used to handle all the input and output, but nowadays is pretty much only used just to boot. And it just loads and executes the first 440 bytes of whatever drive it sees first. Just runs it. Hopefully there's something useful there. Yeah. So like for instance, boot sector games like boot sector Tetris or Floppy Bird are literally just 440 bytes of code that just just get loaded, run. So the BIOS loads so on Linux, the BIOS loads the first 440 bytes of grub, which isn't enough to load all of grub. So it's just a loader that loads, it loads the loader. Yeah, so it loads the loader, and then grub switches the CPU out of 1978 mode in order to, not be incredibly 70s. And then it loads the Linux kernel into RAM, passes it some arguments, and runs it. Also, except it switches back to 1978 mode before it starts running it, because Linux likes to switch itself out of 1978 mode for reasons? Question mark. Reasons. So then, once grub loads the kernel, but the kernel then the kernel has a loader that decompresses. This is all the main drivers and stuff. And once the kernel's up and running, it then hands control over to your init system, which on any modern system is systemd. So systemd handles everything that's needed to bring the system up. So it mounts the file systems and then just starts starting services, and can run those in parallel, unlike, say, I don't know, sysvinit. And as it brings everything up, then it spawns then it starts X11 on a desktop, or spawns your terminals on a server, and then you can use your system. Any questions?
Why is it this way?
Okay. I left out UEFI because I don't know anything about it, because I don't use it on my daily driver PC.
What is your daily driver?
There's talks about it.
Yeah. Okay. My daily driver is a custom-built Linux desktop.
Is it Arch though?
No.
Oh.
I like actually having my computer function.
That's so sad.
Robert throws shit up there. Love to see it.
I don't want to spend all my time fixing Xorg. Yeah.
Understandable.
Okay, so Dan, you asked why is it this way?
Why is it this way?
Mostly historical reasons, because yeah, so obviously they can't change the processors to not do the 70s shit, because that would break compatibility with applications no one runs anymore. But at this point, it's in the spec. Intel has to do it.
Except for you.
Hmm?
So
Yeah.
if you know the answer to this, if you don't, it's not a problem. So like I could just write any bytes to like that area and it will just run it. So like if I have an executable that's like 440 bytes and I just write it to like that area, it'll just run.
It'll just run any valid x86 machine code.
Oh, so would I have to hit the machine code in order to have it run it, or can I?
You do have to compile it all the way to machine code,
Okay.
and also you obviously can't have it depending on anything, because in anything other than the BIOS, you can have it make BIOS interrupts. But
No problem. That's interesting. We also have a question from the Twitch chat. Do you see any new architectures in development that might move away from this?
well, I mean, ARM does things rather differently. Yeah, I don't really know too much about how ARM does things. I haven't looked into it much. But every architecture really has its own boot up process. The x86 one is just the one I'm most familiar with. Yeah, Enzo?
So you said that in Grub 2, it's a loader that loads something else. So can you write something to load something else instead of the normal? That's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
Have you seen that before?
Yeah, so you can have,
Have you seen like someone write something custom maliciously for that?
I haven't seen anything malicious like that, but
Just custom stuff.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just thinking.
One more
Oh,
question,
yeah.
Robert. I'm sorry for drilling you right now. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but this is just interesting. So is this on like, I guess two questions. Is this on Windows and Linux it does this? Like it boots, like the Windows bootloader also does like a, hey, here's Windows?
The Windows boot, I'm not entirely sure how the Windows bootloader does it, but it does definitely still start up in 1978 mode, and then has to load Windows.
And of course, you can load Windows from Grub.
Yes, you can have Grub invoke the Windows bootloader.
Windows broke for me once because I did that. I tried to update Windows because the MBR record wasn't set right. Didn't
Yep.
work.
Yeah, Windows and Linux don't really get along with boot, because they.
Then I switched to Unify.
Yeah.
I guess my second question is, so is there like, I don't know if you've seen this, and this one's a little out there, like, have you seen anything where like, can you like throw your own code in this to make it run your own code as well as the Grub bootloader? Or would that be more of like, I'd have to intercept that Grub in order to run my own stuff as well?
Yeah, well, you can have Grub call into your stuff, or you can put your stuff before Grub. You can't really do it at the same time, because it's still at a phase where there isn't a scheduling OS running, and also yeah, no, there's nothing like that, because that's implemented by your OS, and it is not running the kernel or the OS yet.
That's interesting. No, thanks, Robert.
You have a question, Lod?
Well, I was just wondering, how do I put myself in 1978?
Well, you contact the AMC Motor Company. Yeah.
Any other
Yeah.
questions, guys? Good? All right.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Robert.
you.